It was here before, and we're actually thinking of, it's going to be an experiment where we're going to grow the avo up above. We're going to keep that in, and we're going to try and grow it aeroponically and see if we can get avos to be plant cavalactose faster. So my vision is we'll have the avo plant established up here. The roots will grow into this area where it gets misted, and then we can just go and trim the roots. Wow. I would probably just look up to general Ava does well with a lot of runoff, so I'm sure there's specific fertilizer recommendations, but just a general mulching and general, just a general fertilizer. This is something we would probably use a hydroponic fertilizer in this. This is kind of our little mad science experiment. 3 or 4 plants will occupy the same space, so they'll just be smaller. It's not a big deal. If we were selling them in like as a presentation thing, you want more uniformity, so having each one as an individual helps with the uniformity. This one back here, I think there was one plant that maybe kind of weak or dying off. We need to add a little more, maybe a little leak in this side one. We want to add a little more water. We have any precise. They use versions of this dosatron for like applying medicine to animals and things like that, so they can be very precise. And you can dial it from a ratio of 1 to 50 to 1 to 500. So depending on how strong you make your fertilizer concentration. So what I would do, we oftentimes will add fertilizer to a bucket like this at 100 times the strength that you would water it at. So if normally you put 1 teaspoon per gallon, I would put 100 teaspoons per gallon in here. And then this dosatron, it actually works on it's actually a mechanical thing, so it's very reliable. And as water flows through this system, it gets drawn up through this at a constant rate, and you can have confidence that it's coming out right. And then it also allows us to test with our meter, and so we can test the strength of our. We'll just pour our tea in here, and then we can water it out more properly.
So what gives it the power to move it? Like you putting it here, the compost tea is there.
Yeah, I'll put the compost tea in here, and then the hose is hooked up here, and then we'll just water it out.
Oh, and it just leaks
and it will just, it will draw it up. You'll hear it, it'll start to click
when it's like
when it's starting to draw it up, and you'll see the water flowing through it.
Is there a battery? Like how does it?
No, it works just by the flow of the water. So it's nice for off power.
Oh, that's nice.
And you can actually tell how much flow you have in your system by how many times a minute this is clicking. So there's a way of figuring out like how many gallons I'm putting out into my area or something, based on how many clicks per minute. Dosatron, I usually bring it in from the mainland, but they sold here locally, nursery things, some of the maybe the greenhouse places. As a homeowner, you may want to try the ozone. It's like a $15 or $20 thing. It's just a little brass thing with that kind of tapers into the middle of it, and then from the middle, a hose like this comes down, and you just stick that in. Those work well as long as you have good flow, because it works on like a Venturi effect, so it's like sucking up as water is flowing through that tapered area. So as a first thing, and those ozones work on 16 to 1, so I would put 16 teaspoons per gallon, and then I would water it out. So as a homeowner, those kinds of things work well. Otherwise, just a watering can if you have a small area. This is and I put in some kelp, which is over here, and a little bit of flour. Yeah, those are pretty much some of the things I put in. And there's something I put in that's called humic acid. There should be humic acids. Humic acids are something found in composted decaying material and things like that. So there should be some in the compost, but they found that those kinds of things are catalysts and they can help with uptake of other minerals and nutrients. People used to think that plants only took up very simple ions. You know, that's where a lot of our fertilizers have come from, very simple molecules. So for example, NO3 or K or something like that. But now they're starting to find, or there's a lot of evidence that plants can take up larger kinds of molecules, and so they think some of these humic acids and things like that, the sugars, can be taken up directly. And if you think about it, we have systemic. So the bag was just the compost that I put in.
So that's the compost from the
From our
pile.
pile, yeah. And so at home, you don't have to get all these fancy things.
What kind of bag is that?
I just used a paint strainer from HPM or something like that.
Because you need some holes, but you don't want
So
to
you
dig
want
in.
some. I don't know, does Dr. Ingham always put her compost in a bag, or does she ever have
No,
it
in a
free?
bag.
She always puts it in a bag. So I was wondering about putting it into the material and let it bubble that way, and then siphon it off afterwards. I've tried that before.
No, she does the bag.
Okay. Does she put the flour and things into the bag?
I never heard the flour or the oil, so I really have to look
Yeah.
at the book again.
Okay.
Study it.
So the idea besides some of these things, it just creates a little bit more area for these organisms to live on. Ideally, you'll see the foaming. This isn't, there are fertilizers in here, but it's mainly a long-term investment in your soil and your plant health and things like that. So don't, you can go weekly or longer apart. If you're doing it on a crop you're getting close to harvesting, I would make sure I didn't use any kinds of raw. Budget isn't so much of a concern. This is some worm castings. The guy claimed that was really nice. And so if you don't have a compost pile at home, you could use a couple handfuls of this into a bag and add one.
That's
Yeah, this is 1 teaspoon per gallon, I think.
So if you have really diseased plants or trees or whatever, and you spray this onto the foliage, you should see some pretty dramatic results.
You should see results. When you really are trying to control severe disease problems, you may get inconsistencies depending on how, like the quality of this tea that you've produced. So I think that's why doing research on it has been challenging for people, because every batch probably is a little different. And every year, if you don't have like really severe disease pressure, you probably have good luck. If you have a really heavy infection, teas probably aren't going to be your answer. They will help some, but you're still going to have problems. As a way of being more productive as gardeners. So we're going to try and plant some, establish some sugar. We'll make some, like we make sodas in our class, like we make natural sodas in one of my classes for fun. And so we'll use some of that for that. We'll also use it for these kinds of uses. And then the bagasse part is really, you know, historically anthurium growers love the bagasse. And so we're going to use that for some of our compost.
Where's your sugar cane?
It's at the school,
Oh,
yeah.
at the school.
But anyway, I thought I would just show you guys some of these things.
bit of corn, soybeans. Here's stuff we did a couple weeks ago. That was last week. This is this week, or 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, I don't know which. Growing pretty good, huh?
the string.
Yeah, put a string down.
Better leave the string.
Put them on the weeds. That's a good one.
They got a lot of the different systems here.
Stripes.
There's just those trays that we use. You can actually pile the compost on top of that and shake it back and forth. The fine stuff falls through, the good stuff falls through. You can build screens like with a certain size mesh, and you build a little frame and you lay it on its side. Or you can build ones that fit over a wheelbarrow with two people. You shake it back and forth, and it's a way of.
And then throw the rest back
And
and
throw
you
the
use
rest
what
back.
falls through.
Sometimes you use that for cinder. Also, if you want to get the fine stuff out of the cinder, put it on something like that and shake it. The particles fall through, and then you got the pure coarse cinder, which is good for anthrax. But yeah, as a homeowner with the compost pile, it's really forgiving, so you don't have to be too concerned about. You know, there's a lot of people who are fanatical, and you really don't need to be fanatical about your gardening. It's what suits you well. You know, if you're trying to grow the world's largest pumpkin or something like that, then you got to be fanatical about. For most of us, we just want to get something good to eat, and it's really forgiving. So I have from me here the homeowner would need for pruning. You also might like to get a pole saw or something like that if you have to get up off the ground. So you need a hand pruner for small branches. These are usually less than 1/2 inch.
Pruning the whole tree then, right?
Yeah, maybe we'll come back to this one. Let's start on a little easier one.
Yeah, but it affects the fine ones because my trees are all humongous. I'm going to make them all one side by the time I'm done.
Somebody got the mirror already.
Okay, now.
So on this one we're working with, we're already above where we'd ideally be. A light tree, we want lots of foliage in this area, so we're doomed to some degree. So we have a branch like this.
Oh, that will hit them.
Well, you can see it, but it's split
Yeah,
into two.
yeah, then you do the
So
olive
we'll want to
one.
take the higher one out of it
Yeah.
because this, we want to create more area for one branch to branch out and get thicker and bigger. So what we would want to do is maybe take these two inner ones. And what we're trying to do is encourage it to grow out more and down. And so we'd also want to maybe take the tip off of this leaf here. And so hopefully we're going to get more branching. You can already see branching. So what we're trying to do when we remove the apical part, we're removing some of the auxins, and it stimulates these buds down here to break. If we were really motivated, we might even weight it down and try and get it coming out and down a little more. It's not done a lot with lychee, it's done more with flowers and things like that, but that's something we could do. Here's another example where we have it splitting. We would cut this one. We have another typical
Where is it
one.
splitting?
Wrong one.
It's gonna be
So now we have another one in here that is, so this is actually pretty nice because it's kind of lower growing. And then we have one up here that has a lot of shoots.
So you can leave
So that one might even,
the whole
What would
thing.
you do?
yeah, we might
I
want
would
to just
do
stop that one.
Would you cut closer
Like
to the
below
center?
there. No,
Oh.
down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Because
what
why did you
Just
cut it?
clean this.
Okay, so if
It's an investment.
you're going to cut to a certain place, you want it kind of close to where the nearest bud is.
Okay.
So the reason you do that is you don't want to leave a lot of stumps because
Okay.
they're kind of,
That's what I
I
um,
see what you're saying.
yeah, it's a place.
Okay, get you. See, that's
thought
what
as
gets
long as you
challenging.
cut them off. I thought as long as you cut them off,
Yeah, now we're trying to thin.
It's already.
it's all right.
Yeah.
So really you're trying to direct the growth so big main branches establish their territory. And in the future then you won't have to do so much of this because you already know which are the keepers.
Oh, you're up.
Oh, you know, main one.
So,
Top of it all. Take this one
so
out.
as an example here, there's a little nubby, stumpy kind of thing left to it there.
Carrying one.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Right
No,
here,
it's not.
two little things, this might tend to re-sprout on us. So you cut a little closer to the outlet.
I do this.
You'd be better off.
Told you.
It's hard to do.
That's why I'm not
So
cutting
clean.
that.
Like that would be a little bit better.
And then there's that one in
So you
front
don't want
of
no
you,
shoot
no,
above
the
that.
other, like right in front of you, going way up high. Up with your head.
This one is diseased, so it will grow.
Napoleon. Wait, what's his name? Caesar.
Oh, looks so pretty now that you ready for summer.
Yeah, I might take this one.
Not a happy tree. Lots of yellow leaves.
Happier than my trees.
This is,
Much happier than my seed.
Oh yeah.
All yellow the leaves.